Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Tim Dosemagen. I am the chairman of the board for the 24/7 classroom. It's a pleasure to be here today. And we're recording a faculty development workshop that is called Moodle from A to Z. And this is part one of the presentation. And so you should have a PowerPoint opened in front of you, and that should say Moodle from A to Z, and it's the cover page of a PowerPoint document. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, turn the page, and I'll identify which PowerPoint page we're on so that you can stay linked up with this presentation whenever and wherever you take it. So open up that PowerPoint presentation. Again, it'll be titled Faculty Development Workshop, Moodle from A to Z, Part 1. Welcome to the training. We go to the second slide. As you can see, our agenda is fourfold. We have an entry, an introductory, a discovery, and a conclusion activity. And by the conclusion of this training, we will go through each of those four activities that you see before you. Turn the page. These are our board of directors. And as you can see, many changes, lots of newly populated folks with pictures that we are still adding as we speak. As you get through the board of directors, you should now be on a slide that says introduction. And this introduction gives you an overview of what Education for a Better World is all about, as well as our mission. And then on the next slide, our vision and what our learners expect from us. Take a moment to digest those. And as always, if you ever have any questions about what it is that we exist to do, always refer to the mission and the vision, and of course, refer to what our learner expectations are. The next slide will be called Entry Activity. As soon as you get there, this is about designing a course on parenthood. And the course design on Moodle will start with course exit competencies. So what I'm going to ask you to do as a participant is I'm going to ask you to select your favorite period of child development during your tour of duty as a parent, or perhaps currently as a grandparent. And so if you'll turn the slide, parenthood can be divided into several distinct groups. And you see these groups before you. And from pregnancy all the way through grandparenting, I think we can all agree parenthood is quite a challenge, and it's a very interesting occupation. I've had 2 children and 4 grandchildren. I've had the experience of being a parent on a number of occasions, also while serving as a volunteer on a Boy Scout camp, or serving as a volunteer with the Indian Princesses in Northeastern Illinois. So I think I get the idea of parenthood. My favorite would probably be primary, ages 6 through 11. It's just a wonderful time. Your favorite may be grandparenting. Whatever your favorite is, choose one of these because it's going to be important when you learn how to operate in Moodle. Let's go to the next slide. You'll see pregnancy is explained. If you chose it, take a look at the question and try to answer that question in your mind and jot down a few ideas. Which edutainment tool could you best employ to describe this phase of parenthood? And it could be anything. And we'll talk about edutainment tools in just a few minutes. The next slide covers childbirth. It's the same exercise, if you would. If you chose childbirth, good for you. Describe which edutainment tool would help you best employ description of that phase of parenthood. And the next several slides take you through the new baby, the toddler, exploration, ages 3 to 5, primary, 6 through 11, which was my choice, secondary, 12 through 17, college, 18 through 22, and adulthood. These are all course exit competencies. So when you design your course for Moodle, as we're doing right now, you're not only going to pick your topic, which is going to be your main subject, but you're also going to be talking about course exit competencies, which are very simply subsections of your major topic. And again, to reiterate, when we talk about parenthood, we've got course exit competencies that range everything from the pregnancy to being a grandparent. Good. I think we're all on the same page. On our next slide, I want you to go to the introductory activity. And this will be the slide that is titled Meet Moodle. Introductory activity, Meet Moodle. Beautiful. And what you've got there is a description of what Moodle is not. And it is not primarily a content management system. It does offer a variety of methods to import and export and manage digital content. So when you think of Moodle, I would like you to think of Blackboard and Angel and OLS 1, 2, and 3 as a Corvette or a Maserati. And I want you to think of Moodle as a good old dependable Volkswagen Jetta. Next slide. Moodle is free, it's open source, and because the learning management system is designed for blended learning, one of the beautiful things about Moodle is that it can be used in a number of capacities. A flipped classroom, distance education, other online learning exercises. Moodle is very, very flexible, and it's used across the spectrum, schools, universities, and other sectors. The next slide describes Moodle as a software package for producing internet-based courses and websites. But remember, Moodle is a global development project. Moodle is an ongoing project designed to support social constructs like the framework of education. So Moodle is provided freely and as an open source software. And one of the reasons why the 24/7 Classroom chose Moodle is to help many of our faculty members and our learners across planet Earth who don't have access to fancier learning management systems. That's why we like Moodle here at 24/7. Our next slide is the discovery activity. This is the meat of this training package. We're going to talk about adding very simple edutainment tools to your Moodle course and managing your content. So when we talk about edutainment, we're talking about something that takes on a variety of methods. We're going to cover a few of them, and we're going to see how you can incorporate these edutainment methods into your Moodle course lessonography. The next slide shows you exactly how our source provides direction on how to manage content. So you have a URL with a main page, and you have directions and this list and menu of all of the content management that you need to do to work with files, all the way through downloading course content into your course. Isn't that wonderful? What a great tool. Now, you don't have to watch a 3-hour video and wonder, gee, where do I pick up the trail and where do I go off the trail on how to do filters or how to do, document conventions, you name it. Now you've got it. There's your link. There's your managing content. And you'll notice from managing content, go to the next slide. We go into actual edutainment tools like working with files. Working with files is all about how to upload files and folders into Moodle. So if you're scratching your head, wondering how to do that, go to the next slide. And there's how you do it. Working with files. So as you look there, you'll see a menu and it says contents. Adding files to your course, dragging and dropping all the way down to the end of the list, which gets into alternatives. Folks, that's how you design a course on Moodle.
Love it.
Those are your places to go. Simply drag your mouse on each of those items, click it, and you will get exactly the instructions you need on how to work with files. And now let's go to our next slide. Edutainment tool repositories. This is how to import content into Moodle from external storage sites like Flickr, YouTube, Google, Docs, etc. It doesn't matter what the source, whatever the source is, The repositories function helps you control your imports. Next slide. And there you see it. Notice where it says repositories and notice what the instructions are under contents. There you go. You have what you need. Next slide. The edutainment tool portfolios. This is how to export content from Moodle into external portfolios, such as Mahara. Go to the next slide. There it is, folks. Item by item, how to export, how to use portfolios, and you'll even see described there, in addition to file downloads and Flickr and Google Drive. It even gets into Picasa, Mahara, and of course, the FAQs that come with portfolios. That's your source for portfolios, A to Z. Let's go to our next slide. The edutainment tool working with media. What is media? Well, it's how best to upload and display images, sound, video, and embedded content. If you've wondered how to do this on Moodle, go to the next slide. There are your sources of how to do it. Video, audio, images, media, it's all there. Simply drag your mouse over any of those, click it, and it will describe perfectly exactly what you need to design your course. The next edutainment tool is data formats. And this is important for downloading logs, assignment submissions, and quiz results, and feedback responses. If you go to the next slide, there it is, described in depth, item by item, how to do data formats. So you're saying to yourself, my goodness, how could this be any simpler? How could this be any better organized for me, a course designer, to figure out how to do what I need to do with my Moodle platform? Always remember, you're never alone. You've always got somebody on the 24/7 classroom staff who can help guide you. Perhaps it's an instructional designer. Perhaps it's me as your director of academic affairs and your chairman of the board of directors. Perhaps it's a faculty member that your division director has assigned to you as a mentor. Just know you've got help. But when you don't have help, and when it's midnight, and when you're staring into this flat screen that you're looking at this training on, just take a look at that URL, folks. Do you see the address? That's where you go, docs.moodle.org. And that is your source for everything you're seeing. Let's go to the next slide. Document converters. This is a wonderful edutainment tool because the plugins for converting uploaded assignments, for instance, PDS format for faculty to use for annotations, are right here. Next slide. There are your document converters. And as you see here, you've got Uniconvention and Google Drive Converter. And both of these are readily accessible for you. So there are your document converting tools for using Moodle. Next slide. Filters. We all use filters. So you say to yourself, how do I, with ease, display my media link? How do I display my player, my math symbols and my emoticons and all of the rest? Go to the next slide. There is your edutainment tool, and there is how you use filters. But let's take a look and see what the Moodle Academy has to say about that. And I'm going to start a little video for us right now. And go back to the previous slide, please. And that takes us to our filters slide, and you simply click on to the hot link, and we're going to watch and enjoy a Moodle Academy video.
Moodle has a number of filters which affect how elements of the course are displayed. This video displays in its own player because the multimedia plugins filter has been activated. To see which filters your Moodle administrator has made available, from course navigation, click the More link and then Filters. Note also that we can view and change filters for individual activities from the More link in inside each individual activity.
And just for your sake, Abdi, you should be watching the video. If you go to the next slide and click on the link.
Filters for the course. Activity names auto.
Click the link in purple.
Because it means activity.
Beautiful. Now we're cooking. Thank you, sir.
What are filters? Moodle has a number of filters which affect how elements of the course are displayed. This video displays in its own player because the multimedia plugins filter has been activated. See which filters your Moodle administrator has made available. From Course Navigation, click the More link and then Filters. Note also that we can view and change filters for individual activities from the More link inside each individual activity as well. We're now on the Course Filter Settings page, where we see a list of filters for the course. Activity names auto-linking is useful because it means we can refer to an activity simply by typing its name in a different part of the course, and it will link to that activity. The Multimedia Plugins filter is enabled, so we can display our sound and video files in a player. Glossary auto-linking means that if we add a key term to a glossary and then type that key term somewhere on the course, it would automatically link to its glossary entry. But here is where it's useful to remember that you can turn this off in individual activities. For example, you might not want that in a quiz if the key terms are included in the quiz questions. Let's turn this filter on and see how both the glossary auto-linking filter and the activity names auto-linking filter work in the course. In another video, we added a glossary activity. So now, with edit mode enabled, I'm typing into the summary of the writing section and including a key term from that glossary, and I'm also referencing one of the other activities in the course, a book called Language Levels. If we now save the changes, we can see that if we hover over the word adjective, it takes us to the glossary entry we made in another video. And if we click the words language levels, it takes us directly to that activity in the course.
And very good. So now you've gotten your tutorial, and we'll go to our next slide. And we go to the edutainment tool, downloading course content. Course items, such as content from files and folders and pages and labels, can and will be downloaded. And the next slide shows you exactly how to do it. And there you have your list. How to download content for students, for teachers, right down the line. And it even gives you capabilities. Every question you may have about content, there's your answers. Designers, have fun. Next slide. Let's talk about lessonography. You've heard the term cinematography when it talk about movies. Cinematography is the art and the science of painting a picture in the eye of the person who watches the movie. Lessonography is the art and science of painting a lesson in the eyes and the minds of the learners who are learning. So when we talk about lessonography, we're talking about using tricks and reality bending examples, believe it or not, stories that enhance interest in the lesson. So lessonography takes teaching and makes it three-dimensional. On our next slide, it talks about how to vary pitch, tone, inflection, cadence, and demeanor. This is so important when you design your course. Have you ever heard the difference between open your books to chapter 1, math, we're going to start with addition, then subtraction, then division. If you've ever heard that, you know the story, and you've probably seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's not the 24/7 classroom. And so that's what we want. And that's what we talk about when we talk about lessonography. On our next slide, we talk about using guest lecturers. Folks, this is the wonderful thing about teaching with the 24/7 classroom. You have complete license to use guest lecturers. Get brilliant people to co-teach. And that could be other members of your division that are identified by one of your division directors, or it could be somebody that a board member suggests to you, or maybe it's a colleague that you know at work who's just super smart at what you're doing. Those kinds of people enhance the lesson. On the next slide, it talks about using mind-blowing facts. This is how you salt and pepper a course with what we call cool. It's not enough to state simply that the United States was founded in 1776 and that the United States is coming up on its 250th Jubilee. It's mind-blowing to tell an audience that we are closer today to the tricentennial than we are to the bicentennial by the year 2026. That blows people's minds. And it's just a little bit of a twinge, little bit of a tweak on facts. That's what we talk about when we talk about mind-blowing. The next slide. This is so simple. Make it a guided discovery. Tell a story. What a difference, again, between getting to a cave with a bunch of bats and a bunch of stalactites and stalagmites and having your tour guide say, we're going to go in the cave. Please put on your helmets and please watch out for obstacles. To a tour guide who says, okay, point your flashlights at the ceiling. Those are stalagmites. Those are stalactites. The stalagmites might fall from the ceiling and bonk you on the head. The stalactites might make you walk tightly in formation, and watch out for the bat guano in the back of the cave. You get the difference. Make it a guided discovery. Make it exciting, and your passion will come through in your lessonography. On our next slide, it talks about examples from history and making it come alive. Have you ever used history in your lessonography? I hope you have. And it's important to do because it ties the lesson with the learner's knowledge of the past. That's a key. And so we dial in why it's significant to learn what we're learning. On our next slide, it talks about learner-centered lessons. Every lesson that you design, you're welcome to use this. It works. You have 4 sections to the lesson. The entry activity, which grabs the learner's attention and dials them into your course. The introductory activity, which introduces the lesson du jour. The discovery activity, which really rolls up our sleeves and dives into what it is that we're there to learn. And the conclusion activity, which is the glide path, flaps full. Folks, thank you for flying Southwest Airlines. You've been a great passenger. We're about to land this lesson. That learner-centered methodology really works. I would encourage you to use it. And one thing you'll notice about 24/7 classrooms, faculty development workshops, each of them has those 4 learner-centered lessonography pieces. Get used to them and learn to like them. They're very effective. On our next slide, this is so simple. You get this. Mix your media. Look at all the options you have at your disposal. It's astounding. And if you choose news outlets, go global. The big dogs are listed there. In Germany, I prefer the Frankfurter Allgemein. Hindustan News is good in India. In China, you're very limited. They have very few media outlets, but I give you a couple of the good ones there. South China Morning Post is very honest and it's very open. But if you do use a Chinese source, you're welcome to go ahead and give a shot to using the People's Daily. Just be prepared. You're going to be getting exactly what the government wants you to know. And somebody might say, well, in the United States, if I listen to CNN, I'm getting exactly what the left side of the government wants me to know. And if I listen to Fox, I'm getting exactly what the right side of the government wants me to know. And you know what? You'd be absolutely correct. Just know the filters, know the slant, know the bias, and caveat emptor. Next slide. Make it fun, but make it fun with a purpose. And go ahead and tell your learners why they're there. Remind them of why they're taking this course and tell them what you're about to do is going to be fun. And here's how. The next slide talks about being interactive. I want you to think of your favorite band. Why are they your favorite band? Is it because they make good music? Sure. Is it because they write beautiful songs? They package it well on nice CDs? Good. Is it because they're out there? Is it because they're performing? Probably. I want you to think of your favorite band. I put a few examples here. Think about how that band performs. Perform the exact same way for your course. This is your time to shine. You've designed a masterpiece. Be proud of it. Perform it. Make yourself engaging and personal. We do this in a number of ways. A lot of it has to do with our tone of voice. But I want you to think of your favorite program. Maybe it's on the History Channel. Maybe it's Ghost Adventures. When you think about how that host of that program talks, Zach Bagans on Ghost Adventures has a very special way that he intones his lessonography. It's very personal. When you listen to him talk, it's almost as if you're in a room alone with him, that he's advising you. That's a great way to engage a learner. Or you might hear Josh on Expedition Unknown talking about how excited he was to go into a cave filled with bats in Peru and get scared because his rope was dangling too low. Josh will tell it to you like you're sitting across a room sharing a Coke. That's how you engage the learner. On our next slide, we talk about using relevant and current examples. Tie the lesson to the current day. We talked about using historic examples. Also, use examples that tie your lesson to today. Why is it relevant? What's going on? Are you still suffering from the Great Resignation? Are you still rebounding from COVID and the ravages of the shutdowns? Tie it to today. Your learners will dial it in. Be novel. Make your presentation very fresh and very cool. And if you'll notice the pictures of the people that are on that slide, you'll notice each of them, whether it's Brian Cox, the physicist rock star on the far right, with his Manchester accent talking about how excited he is to discover what they're doing in CERN with the Hydra Collider, or whether it's the lady all the way on the far left who happens to be a very capable Nightline host, or if it's the five on Fox, or our good friend Josh. They all have one thing in common. They make their presentations very fresh and very cool. Do the same thing. Employ big concepts. Think about the composite image of Earth at night, which all of us have seen, right? You've got the continents and the oceans, no lights, and then you've got these beautiful coasts, and you can make out Tokyo, Osaka, you can make out New York City, you can see the lights gleaming. Use those kinds of images, or maybe the Earthrise taken by astronaut James Lovell on Apollo 8 in 1968, the mission right before Neil Armstrong landed. That beautiful picture of the blue marble rising over the dead moonscape. And you look at that planet and you think of what Carl Sagan wrote about the human condition. That's exciting, big concept stuff. Use stuff like that in your courses, and you're going to be a popular instructor with 24/7. The next slide talks about tying your points to the popular culture. This is important if you have a course that's very germane to the popular culture in the country in which you want your course to be a popular course. So what's an example of that? COVID is universal. But if you're going to be talking about how to wash a mask to protect yourself from transmitting COVID, well, not a lot of people in the United States are wearing cloth masks, but a lot of people in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, and throughout South Asia are indeed wearing cloth masks and washing those masks with soap and water. Be cognizant of the differences and tie them in with the popular culture of your intended audience. Our next slide talks about reinforcing your points with reflection exercises. I can't stress this enough. Reflection is so important go ahead and take the opportunity in your course to design at least several reflection exercises. And the best way to do that is to have a directed study question. What is reflection? It's so simple. So you've just taken a course on how to control the post and how to be an offensive and a defensive juggernaut on the basketball court. You've learned how the Bulls did it in the great 1990s dynasties of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, the three-headed monster at center, and Tony Kukoc, the great sixth man, Steve Kerr, the great three-point shooter, Dennis Rodman, the great rebounder. But now you need to reflect on what you've just learned. Here's the reflection exercise. Looking back at the Bulls dynasties of the 1990s and all the role players that they had, could they have won 6 championships without the coaching of Phil Jackson? That's a question that causes reflection. Use those kinds of questions to tie your lessonography. Provide deeper meanings. And then our next slide after deeper meanings is teach it today, have your learners apply it tonight. In my courses, I repeatedly challenge my learners, go ahead, use this. Use this in your workplace. Do it today. Apply what you've learned today. Make it work for you. Put it to work. Don't let it sit on a shelf. As Bill Pepito, the eminent trainer, once said, you can measure the quality of any course, of any training activity, exactly inverse to the size of the 3-ring binder that sits on your desk after you graduate from the course or the course of study. The larger the binder, probably the less the material is being used day to day. Add graphics that pop. And folks, this is the advantage that we have today in the year 2022. If you haven't mastered it yet, master the art of Google image, copy, paste. Google image, fill in the blank, copy image, save image as, and name that image and use that image. Many of you are going to wonder, is there intellectual property that I need to be worried about? Folks, we live in a wonderful age, and I'm going to share the following facts with you. If it's posted and it's not protected on the image, if there's not an image that says across the image, protected, Shutterstock, protected, you can use the image. It's called fair use. Go ahead, use images and use images prolifically in your instruction. Why? Because it'll make your curriculum come alive. Engage the left brain and the right brain. Notice on this slide, it says the left brain being Kirk and the right brain being Spock. Well, I guess the best way I could put it is right brain people happen to be engineers. They happen to be very factual. And left brain learners tend to be more imaginative. They paint pictures. Use both brains and engage both brains in your lessonography. Why? Because only about 30% of our audience are going to be left-brained. Most people are very right-brained. We have more Spocks than we do Kirks. So engage them both. Go international. This slide talks about examples from the world's top 20 economies and top 20 populations. I think all of us can probably reel off those economies and those populations just off the tops of our heads. But folks, some of them are going to be surprising to you. For instance, you may not know that Nigeria now has a population of 245 million people. You may not know that Brazil has a population that eclipses 200 million people. Bangladesh, a country the size of Wisconsin, has a population of 165 million people. That's more people than Japan. Check out those top 20 populations, check out those top 20 economies, and start using examples from them, and your lessonography will become much more relevant to your learners. On our next slide, we talk about going intercultural. Think about the most popular bands in history. The Beatles. Do you remember Paul McCartney's great hit, Michelle? Sunday, mon qui vont play bien ensemble, play bien ensemble, très bien ensemble. Why? Because he had a French audience. They performed in the Cavern Club in Liverpool to American audiences. They performed in Hamburg, in Germany, to German audiences. Think about K-pop. Think about any international band. They do it. Do the same thing in your lessonography. Go international. If you speak a second or a third or a fourth language, if you've lived overseas, weave your experiences, share your pictures, share a few good words in those tongues that you learned how to speak when you were overseas. It makes your lessonography cool. It makes it pop. The next slide talks about including diverse examples, which includes education and upbringing, family size. And notice as you take a look at all of those, one piece of all of that happens to be ethnicity. Many times in the United States, we get wrapped up in surface skin melanin when we talk about diversity, don't we? We tend to look at ourselves and we say, oh, diversity. That means Caucasian, Asian American, white, black, right? American Indian. It gets very, very simplistic when we only look at melanin on the surface of the skin. And as you look at this slide, I think we realize diversity is a very rich tapestry. It includes nationality, gender, tech savvy, geography. Use all of the diverse examples in your lessonography. Our conclusion activity is very simple. Before I thank you for being part of this seminar, as we move into our 42nd minute of the seminar, I want to challenge you to select 5 examples of your favorite edutainment lessonography from the slides that we've just walked through. I want you to match those to your current course exit competencies from Parenthood. And what I want you to do is bring these to part 2 of this Moodle course. So again, you're going to select 5 examples of your favorite edutainment lessonography from the slides we just walked through, and you're going to match those with your course exit competencies from earlier. And you're going to bring those to part 2 of this training. I'm Dr. Tim Dosemagen. It's been a pleasure being your trainer today. Welcome to Moodle. Now, go to work, roll up your sleeves, design the course, and remember, if you don't know how to do it, now you know exactly where to go to find out 24/7, 365. Use the URL. Thank you for being a part of this training. We'll see you in section 2. Thank you for being a faculty with the 24/7 classroom. Bye-bye.